By the first week of July, two major donors had paused their pledges to my father's organization, and a red Ferrari was winched onto a flatbed in broad daylight outside the country club in an owner-authorized pickup. I did not know it on that quiet June afternoon, but those were the first public cracks in a story my family had rehearsed for years. My name is Madison Hale. I am 32. I serve as a vice president of marketing, splitting my time between New York and Boston. My total compensation is a little over $620,000, which sounds impressive until you learn how quickly family can turn a salary into an obligation. I used to believe betrayal stayed private. I thought it lived in whispers and polite silences, in the way a room goes quiet when you enter. I was wrong. Sometimes betrayal dresses up smiles for photos and mails you a date designed to keep you out of the frame. Here is what they did not know. I document. I date stamp. I keep receipts and I keep my voice level. If you have ever carried the people you love while they told you that carrying them was simply your duty, tell me where you are listening from. I want to know your city. I grew up in Massachusetts. My parents keep a Tudor-style home in Weston where the hedges are neat and the windows gleam. My brother Nolan has always been the golden child. His wife Kendra is newer to the script, but she learned the cues quickly. I am the responsible one. I am the person who remembers the tax deadline and brings extra chargers to family events. I am the one who made the transfers that kept our lake cottage out of foreclosure and looking photo-ready for holidays. For 8 years, I moved money through a Delaware company because it kept the accounting clean and the emotions quieter. Roofing, foundation work, electrical permits, tax bills. If the cottage needed help, I typed and it arrived. I told myself it was just what successful daughters do. I told myself I was lucky to be able to help. The truth is simpler. When a family trains you to be useful, you learn to measure your worth in invoices paid. I did not know it then, but the real wedding date I was supposed to celebrate with my family was a Saturday in early June, specifically June 7th. The card in my purse said something else. I will get to that. Well, a few quiet habits changed my life. I save copies of every deed and every invoice. I label files with dates and names. I keep a running list of questions I intend to ask when the room is calm. 3 clues sat in that list long before the Ferrari rolled away. First, a recorded deed showing the cottage in the name of my Delaware company as of April 2022. Second, a growing stack of invoices with my company as payer of record, not my parents. Third, the sense that I was being managed out of family milestones with a politeness sharp enough to cut. I did not explode. I organized. I breathed. I told myself to wait for facts because facts are louder than any speech I could give. And then the facts arrived one after another, wrapped in images and timestamps. Let me rewind before the Ferrari, before the donors, before the lobby showdowns that came later. Before the loud moments, there were years of quiet ones, years of sacrifice that felt like love because no one told me there was a difference. That is where this really starts. That is where this really starts. Not with a toe strap or a donor call, but with small choices I made for years because they seemed easier than saying no. Looking back now, I can see the pattern as clearly as a spreadsheet. I was the responsible child. Nolan was the golden child. I learned to carry lists and timelines. He learned to carry applause. Our parents rewarded need more than effort, and I had the bad luck of being competent. College set the tone. I worked 2 campus jobs and stitched together scholarships. Nolan took a gap to explore a concept which was a generous way of describing a series of unfinished ideas with expensive equipment. When I got my first marketing role, I sent part of every paycheck home for a while stretched into years. Each time I thought I was done, a new emergency arrived with a polite subject line. The lake cottage became the hinge for all of it. On paper, it was a family treasure. In practice, it was a leaking roof, a buckling dock, and a tax bill no one wanted to open. I created a Delaware company to route the payments because it kept my personal account separate and made the paper trail clean. I told myself it was professional. I told myself this was wise stewardship. The truth is simpler. The company gave me a story that made it easier to keep paying. Over 3 years, I covered roughly $480,000 tied to that property and to Nolan's orbit. That was about 40% of my after-tax income during those years. I am not reciting those numbers to impress you. I am saying them out loud because when you are trained to be useful, you downplay the cost of usefulness. Cost is not just money, it is sleep joy, and the part of you that stops raising your hand for your own life. The line items were ordinary on their face, a roof replacement that came in a touch higher than expected, which is how contractors make panic sound polite. Foundation piers, after a spring thaw, revealed the house had been settling for longer than anyone wanted to admit. An electrical panel upgrade because a romantic string light scheme tripped breakers all summer. Property taxes that arrive whether you are speaking to your family or not. Looking back now, there were warnings, and I archived them like weather reports. A text from my mother's sweetheart, "Successful children do not keep score." A call from my father after I asked for receipts. "Your tone is becoming abrasive, Madison." A grin from Nolan when he waved a cocktail at a barbecue and said, "Investors like my energy, as if energy were collateral." I started labeling my transfers with small jokes to keep myself from crying about them. Dock boards round 1, surprise surcharge round 2, storm aftermath round 3. Those notes became evidence later, but at the time they were just a way to make a bruise feel like a joke. I saved every invoice with my company listed as the payer of record. I downloaded email confirmations into a tidy folder by month. I did not think of it as a case file. I thought of it as responsibility. Holidays worked like this. If Nolan showed up late, we applauded his entrance. If I asked why the tax bill had not been paid, I was killing the mood. If Nolan needed a car, my parents talked about how important mobility is for an entrepreneur. When I asked why the registration came through a company I had never heard of, I was told not to worry about logistics. I used to say, "Okay, just to move dinner along." The worst part was how normal generosity felt. I sent a transfer and felt proud of being the kind of daughter who could help. I scheduled contractors and felt useful. I forwarded an insurance policy and felt grown up. That is the trap. When a family turns your competence into a communal utility, every act of self-respect looks selfish. Looking back now, I can name 3 moments when the floor shifted a little under my feet. First, the day I realized I had memorized the cottage parcel number, but could not remember the last time anyone asked how I was. Second, a summer Sunday when Nolan introduced me to his friends as our family CFO and laughed like it was charming. Third, an email from my mother that ended with delete. After reading about a cash infusion she did not want my father to see, I did not delete it. I archived it with the others. Aunt Maxine was the only person who ever knocked on my door just to ask if I had eaten. She noticed things. She noticed how I always stood at the edge of photos ready to fetch, to fix, to fill. She noticed how I never brought dates to Thanksgiving because my calendar belonged to everyone else. She once said, "Some people are loved for who they are. Others are loved for what they solve." I pretended I did not understand. I understood perfectly. The cottage transfer in April of 2022 should have changed everything. The deed was recorded in my Delaware company's name. I had the original signatures, the notarizations, the clerk's stamps, the whole chain. It was not a surprise. It was a negotiation. My parents needed liquidity for one of Nolan's ventures. I provided it, and in exchange the cottage moved to the only person who had been treating it like a responsibility rather than a backdrop. For a while, everyone behaved as if the paper did not exist. They still called it our place, and posted photos like I was the caretaker, not the owner. I swallowed the correction because silence kept the peace. The imbalance bled into work. When a major client renewed after a brutal quarter, my mother texted, "So proud of you, darling. Could you help your brother with a little bridge until his next round closes?" A little bridge is such a pretty way to describe a wire that never returns. Looking back now, I see how cleverly family can be used as collateral. It is not written anywhere, but it is understood the responsible one floats the rest. The responsible one takes the hit. The responsible one keeps the secret so the story stays pretty. If you are the responsible one, you already know the ending of that story. The ending is you empty, while everyone else toasts to loyalty. Small details started to itch. I noticed receipts from the cottage kept arriving in my email rather than my parents'. I noticed that my name or my company's sat wherever the phrase payer of record appeared. I noticed a message thread about a boat purchase timed for the day after I left a holiday weekend, as if I were allergic to fiberglass and not to lying. None of it was a smoking gun. All of it was a pattern. A pattern is powerful when you stop pretending it is random. Once I let myself call it what it was, exploitation wrapped in etiquette, I stopped arguing about tone and started curating proof. I made a private note titled, "When this happens again," and dropped in anything that felt like a breadcrumb. Contract copies, insurance declarations, screenshots with dates in the corner. I was not planning revenge. I was planning to stop being gaslit by charm. There is a moment always when your body knows before your brain will allow it. For me, it came on a Tuesday night when I was refiling PDFs after a long day. I reached for another invoice and felt the kind of fatigue that sits behind your ribcage. I heard my own voice in my head say, "I am not a bank." The sentence startled me. It also calmed me. I looked around my apartment, the one quiet space I fully paid for, and realized how many decisions I had delayed to subsidize people who did not send thank you cards. That awareness did not turn me into a different person. It made me into a more honest one. I still showed up to family dinners, I still brought desserts, I still answered calls. I just stopped treating urgent as a magic word and family as a blank check. Looking back now, the most dangerous thing my parents taught me was that peace is the absence of my boundaries. If I did not ask questions, we had harmony. If I did not correct falsehoods, we had unity. The bill for that kind of peace is always paid by the person who can afford to pay. I paid it for 8 years. And then an invitation arrived with my name in gold script and a date that glowed like a promise. I tucked it into my purse along with the same optimism I had carried since childhood. I could not see the trick yet, but I could feel the table was set for a familiar meal, my generosity as the appetizer, my silence as the entree, and a slice of gratitude for dessert. I went looking for a dress that would not outshine the bride and would not offend my mother. I bought a simple one, elegant and quiet, the sartorial equivalent of "I belong here" without taking up space. I wrapped a crystal frame in neat paper and tied it with ribbon. I told myself grown women do not need perfect families to show up with grace. I did not know then that the date on my card was a decoy. I did not know the real wedding happened a Saturday earlier on June 7th, while I was working on a pitch deck and planning what words might make an icy room warmer. I did not know how quickly the breadcrumbs I had been collecting would turn into a path I could follow out of the maze. All I knew was this: the next time someone told me to delete a message, I would save 2 copies. The next time a bill arrived with my company named and their story stretched thin, I would stop pretending we shared the truth. The album on Aunt Maxine's coffee table would supply the shock. The Ring camera and the group chat would supply the certainty. But before those pages and pings, there was this long, quiet part, the years when I taught everyone around me how to use me. That is the part I am done teaching. The shock did not arrive as a shout. It arrived as paper, glossy, heavy, and smiling. Aunt Maxine set the wedding album on her coffee table like it could hold the room together. Sunlight slid across the pages. There was my brother Nolan beaming beside his new wife. There were my parents' faces lit with a pride I had not seen pointed in my direction since grade school. There was everyone who mattered, according to the caption Nolan would later write. Everyone except me. I was holding a wrapped crystal frame, my gift, when my fingers simply let go. The glass hit the hardwood in a bright scatter. The sound felt like the inside of my chest. Maxine reached for a broom, then stopped and took my hand instead. "Madison, honey," she said, voice low, like the way nurses talk when they have to deliver news gently. "I thought you knew. The wedding was last weekend." I pulled the invitation from my purse, as if calligraphy could rearrange time. "It says June 15th, I told her. Tomorrow." Maxine slid on her reading glasses and placed my invitation beside the folded program she had brought home. The program said Saturday, June 7th, 8 days earlier. She looked at me, then back at the dates, and her mouth flattened into something that was not surprise. "They sent you the wrong date," she said, on purpose. The room did not tilt. My mind did what it always does when someone tries to hand me a story that will not stand up. It collected facts. Maxine pressed her lips together like she was weighing whether to keep a promise. "There is something else," she said. She pulled out her phone and opened a video. The image was a still from my parents' Ring doorbell camera. The audio was the part that mattered. My mother's voice, crisp and soft at the same time, said, "Make sure the copy with the later date goes to Madison. We do not need intensity at the ceremony." Intensity. It was the family word for my refusal to be scenery. Maxine swiped to a second image, a screenshot of a family group chat I am not in. The message that made her print it was from a cousin Rebecca who had forwarded it to Maxine because her stomach hurt when she read it. Problem solved, someone had typed. Send the decoy invitation and do not add her to the photo list. I let the phone rest on my knee. I looked at the album again. It is a particular kind of loneliness to realize your absence was not an accident. It was logistics. I argued with your mother, Maxine said. She said it would keep the peace. That phrase has done more damage to decent people than open conflict ever has. I knelt and gathered the broken glass into the wrapping paper, folding the edges over like I could gift wrap the feeling. My voice came back calm. They have treated me like I am invisible for years, I said. Now they put it in writing. On my way home, I did the thing I do when a narrative does not add up. I opened my laptop. I pulled up my accounts. I compared charges. 2 new entries sat on a card that should never have been used for family business. One was a catering deposit from a vendor whose name matched the program. The other was a floral invoice with a delivery date that lined up with June 7th. Together, they were roughly $28,400. At the time, I did not know what to do with that number. I only knew it did not belong to me. Breadcrumbs multiply when you stop sweeping them away. I opened the folder where I save confirmations. There was a venue hold email I had never seen directly forwarded weeks ago by my mother with the line, "Just fixing a small clerical thing." There was a voicemail transcription from Nolan saying he needed one perfect day, a phrase that would echo later in a living room I had grown up in. I texted Maxine, "I am going to need copies." She arrived the next morning with a manila envelope. Inside were the program, a printed still from the Ring camera with the timestamp in the corner, and the group chat screenshot with the names unblurred. She put a hand on my shoulder. "You are not crazy," she said. "You are just outnumbered." I sat with the envelope for a minute before I opened my mouth. "I have been paying for the cottage and a lot of their emergencies for 8 years," I said. "They know I document everything. Why would they risk this?" Maxine sighed in that way older women sigh when they have picked up too many pieces for too many people. "Because they believe you will not use what you document," she said. "They believe you love peace more than truth. The thing about a pattern is that once you see it, you cannot unsee it." The wrong date invitation was not an isolated cruelty. It was the logical next step in a system where my competence had become a resource and my presence a liability. I replayed the Ring audio until I could recite my mother's sentence without hearing her voice. I studied the group chat screenshot until the words lost their shine and read like what they were instructions to erase me. I made a note to pull the deed file again, not because I doubted it, but because asserting facts goes better when your proof is within reach. April 2022. My Delaware company as the 100% owner of record. Taxes paid by me, roof by me, dock by me. It is amazing how brave other people can be with what you own. Then the phone rang. My father's handwriting appeared on a digital envelope. He had mailed a letter that would reach my office in a day, but he could not wait to push the narrative. The message preview said family comes first. We had our reasons. I did not open it. I put my hand on the envelope Maxine had brought and kept breathing. The next breadcrumb arrived the same afternoon. A calendar notice from my building's front desk wedding photography pickup approved. I called downstairs. "What is being picked up?" I asked. The concierge's voice was careful. "A framed print delivered to your parents' name was held for you," he said. "They asked if we could release it to an assistant. They were collecting the evidence from my building, too." The audacity felt almost elegant. This is where people expect rage. Rage is clean on screen. But that is not what came. What came was geometry. Lines connected, angles appeared. I could see with a clarity that made me sit down how the decoy invitation was not about a day. It was about training. If they could erase me from a moment that should have included me by default, then every lesser erasure would feel reasonable. I printed one more thing before I left my apartment. The month's card statement with those 2 vendor charges highlighted in yellow. I slid the Ring, still the program, the group chat screenshot, and the statement into a slim folder. I wrote one word on the tab: facts. Then I drove to Weston. I did not go there to demand an apology. I went to confirm the story to their faces, and to hear the line I knew Nolan would say even before he said it. I went because gaslighting works better in your absence. I went because clarity once you have it wants air. I parked in the circular drive and turned off the engine. Through the bay window I could see my mother laughing her delicate laugh, and my father leaning back the way he does when he is pleased with the room. Nolan held a portrait over the mantel, angling it until the light hit her veil just so. I stood in the doorway until the quiet broke. My mother tucked her champagne flute behind a frame with practiced grace. She said my name like it was a question she did not want answered. My father studied his hands. Nolan kept his fingers on the edge of his perfect day. "The wedding was last weekend," I said. "You sent me the wrong date." Nolan did not look at me. "We needed one perfect day without you," he said. The certainty in his voice did more for my peace than any apology could have. It was not a misunderstanding, it was a decision, and when people tell you who they are with that kind of clarity, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to believe them. I set the folder on the coffee table and flipped it open. "Let us be precise," I said. "Program for Saturday, June 7th. Audio from your own front door. Screenshot from the family chat I am not in. And charges for catering and flowers that ran through a card I control." My mother adjusted her pearls. My father swallowed a sentence he could not shape into anything defensible. Nolan stared at the album like he might fall into it. I was not there to argue. I was there to end a story I had been cast in without my consent. I closed the folder. "Tomorrow I will speak to my attorney," I said. "Tonight I am going home." I carried the folder to the door. I left the broken frame wrapped in paper on Maxine's counter because I did not want to take the shards with me. In the car, I let the engine idle and the facts settle. There is a quiet that comes after you stop hoping someone will be different than they are. It is not joy. It is scaffolding. The shock did not arrive as a fight. It arrived as paper, glossy, heavy, smiling in my face. Aunt Maxine set the wedding album on her coffee table like it might hold the room together. Sunlight skimmed the pages. There was my brother Nolan beaming beside his new wife. There were my parents lit up with the kind of pride I had not seen aimed at me since grade school. The caption Nolan would later post said, "Everyone who matters." I was not there. I was still holding a wrapped crystal frame, my gift, when my fingers let go. The glass hit the hardwood in a bright scatter. The sound matched the inside of my chest. Maxine reached for a broom, then changed her mind and took my hand instead. "Madison, honey," she said, voice low, the way nurses talk when the news is bad. "I thought you knew. The wedding was last weekend." I pulled the invitation from my purse like calligraphy could rewrite time. "It says June 15th, I said. "Tomorrow." Maxine slid on her reading glasses and set my card beside the folded program she had brought home. The program said Saturday, June 7th, 8 days earlier. She looked at the dates, then at me, and her mouth settled into a line that was not surprise. "They sent you the wrong date," she said, "on purpose." The room did not tilt. My mind did what it always does when a story will not stand up. It collected facts. Maxine hesitated like she was weighing a promise. "There is something else." She opened a video on her phone. The image was a still from my parents' Ring doorbell. The audio was the point. My mother's voice, crisp and soft, at once said, "Make sure the copy with the later date goes to Madison. We do not need intensity at the ceremony." Intensity. In our family, that word meant I refused to be scenery. Maxine swiped to a screenshot from the family group chat I am not in. A cousin Rebecca had forwarded it to her because her stomach hurt reading it. "Problem solved," someone wrote. "Send the decoy invitation and do not add her to the photo list." I set the phone on my knee, looked at the album again. It is a particular loneliness to learn your absence was not an accident. It was logistics. "I argued with your mother," Maxine said. "She said it would keep the peace." That phrase has bruised more decent people than any honest argument ever has. I knelt, gathered the broken glass into the wrapping paper, and folded the edges like I could gift wrap the feeling. When I spoke, my voice was steady. "They have treated me like I am invisible for years," I said. "Now they put it in writing." On my way home, I did what I do when the narrative does not add up. I opened my laptop. I pulled up accounts. I compared charges. 2 new vendor entries were sitting on a card that should never have been touched for family business. One was a catering deposit from the vendor listed on the program. The other was a floral invoice scheduled for Saturday, June 7th. Together, they totaled about $28,400. I did not know yet what to do with that number. I only knew it did not belong to me. Breadcrumbs multiply when you stop sweeping them away. In my confirmations folder, I found a venue hold email I had not been copied on, originally forwarded by my mother, with the line, "Fixing a tiny clerical thing." There was a voicemail transcription from Nolan asking for one perfect day, a phrase that would echo in a living room I knew by heart. I texted Maxine I am going to need copies. She arrived the next morning with a manila envelope, the program a printed still from the Ring camera with the timestamp, and the chat screenshot with names unblurred. She put a hand on my shoulder. "You are not crazy," she said. "You are outnumbered." "I have been paying for the cottage and a long list of emergencies for 8 years," I said. "They know I document everything. Why risk this?" "Because they think you will not use what you document," she said. "They think you love peace more than truth. Once you see a pattern, you cannot unsee it." The wrong date invitation was not random cruelty. It was the next beat in a score they had been playing for years, my competence as a resource, my presence as a problem to be managed. I replayed the Ring audio until I could recite my mother's sentence without hearing her voice. I studied the chat screenshot until the words lost their shine and read like what they were, instructions to erase me. I pulled the deed file again, not because I doubted it, but because facts work best when they are within reach. April of 2022. My Delaware company recorded as the 100% owner of record, taxes paid by me, roof by me, dock by me. People can be very brave with what you own. Then an email from my father arrived with the subject line, "Family comes first." The body said, "We had our reasons." I did not respond. I put my hand on Maxine's envelope and kept breathing. The building concierge called that afternoon. "A framed print delivered for you has your parents' names on the gift tag," he said. "They asked to send an assistant to pick it up. Do you approve?" They were trying to collect a keepsake through my lobby too. The audacity almost made me laugh. This is where people expect rage. Rage is clean on camera. That is not what came. What came was geometry. Lines connected, angles appeared. The decoy invitation was not about one day. It was training. If they could erase me from a moment that should include me by default, then every smaller erasure would seem reasonable. I printed my card statement with those 2 vendor charges highlighted in yellow. I slid the Ring, still the program, the chat screenshot, and the statement into a slim folder. I wrote one word on the tab, fax. Then I drove to Weston. I did not go to win an apology. I went to confirm the story to their faces and to hear the sentence I knew Nolan would say even before he said it. Gaslighting works better when you are not in the room. Clarity. Once you have it, wants air. I parked in the circular drive and cut the engine. Through the bay window, my mother laughed her delicate laugh. My father leaned back in his chair the way he does when he is pleased with the room. Nolan angled a portrait over the mantel so the veil caught the light. I stood in the doorway until the silence broke. My mother hid her champagne flute behind a frame with practiced grace. She said my name like a question she hoped I would not answer. My father studied his hands. Nolan kept one finger on the edge of his perfect day. "The wedding was last weekend," I said. "You sent me the wrong date." Nolan did not look at me. "We needed one perfect day without you," he said. His certainty did more for my peace than any apology could. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a decision. When people tell you who they are with that kind of clarity, believe them. I set the folder on the table and opened it. "Let us be precise," I said. "Program for Saturday, June 7th. Audio from your own front door. Screenshot from the family chat I am not in, and 2 vendor charges that ran through a card I control." My mother adjusted her pearls. My father swallowed a sentence he could not shape into anything useful. Nolan stared at the album like he wanted to fall inside it. I was not there to argue. I was there to end a script I had never agreed to. I closed the folder. "Tomorrow I will call my attorney," I said. "Tonight, I am going home." I carried the folder to the door. I left the wrapped broken frame on Maxine's counter because I did not want to take the shards with me. In the car, I let the engine idle and the facts settle. There is a quiet that comes when you stop hoping someone will be different than they are. It is not joy, it is scaffolding. By the time I turned onto the main road, I knew what came next. Not an explosion, a revelation, a calm line drawn with a steady hand and a notarized pen. Not an explosion, a revelation. It came in layers, clicking into place as precisely as a lock that finally meets its key. I stood in my parents' living room and felt the performance around me. The air smelled like peonies and furniture polish. Condensation gathered on the side of my mother's champagne flute. My father's leather recliner creaked when he shifted. The wedding album lay open on the coffee table, every page a pose. I had already said the sentence that mattered. The wedding was last weekend. You sent me the wrong date, and Nolan had already delivered the line he had rehearsed for years. We needed one perfect day without you. Hearing it out loud did not burn. It clarified. My eyes found the mirror above the mantel. The woman staring back at me had spent decades shrinking to keep the room smooth, shoulders slightly tucked, chin tilted down, the posture of a person who thinks harmony is her job. I straightened until my spine felt like a statement. Let us stop pretending, I said, my voice even. The real date was Saturday, June 7th. The card you mailed me said June 15th. That was not a mistake. It was a plan. I did not raise my tone. I did not need to. The facts were already louder than any defense they could attempt. A plan has authors. I laid the folder on the table and spoke in the patient cadence I reserve for tough meetings. Audio from your own front door, I said, sliding out the ring still. Your voice, Mom, instructing that the later date go to me. I placed the printed group chat beside it. The family thread, I am not in where the decoy is discussed, and my name is removed from the photo list. I added my card statement with 2 highlighted charges, catering and florals scheduled for Saturday, June 7th, about $28,400, that should never have touched a card I control. My father looked at his hands like the answers might be etched there. My mother adjusted her pearls, that practiced movement that tells donors she is composed. Nolan stared at the album as if he could fall through a smiling page and hide there. Their silence was not shock, it was calculation. They were measuring which version of the story might still sell. You could have told me you did not want me there, I said. That would have been cruel but honest. Instead, you engineered my absence, and you charged me to help pull it off. Revelation is not just about what happened. It is about how often it has happened and how long you have agreed to carry it. I spoke the history to the room so I would not forget it later. For 8 years I covered the lake cottage, I said. Taxes, roof, dock, electrical. I routed it through my Delaware company because I wanted clean paper. In April of 2022, the deed transferred into that company. I have the recorded document, the clerk's stamp, the chain of title. I am the 100% owner of record. I let that sit. People can be very brave with what you own, and they had been. You have been calling it our place while using my money and my name to keep it alive, I continued. You have been telling yourselves I am intense while training me to mistake silence for love. I looked from the mirror to my mother. What you call intensity is the sound of me refusing to be scenery. I closed the folder and felt something steady take root. Not anger. Alignment. The kind that clicks through your chest when the story you have been telling yourself finally matches the facts you have been collecting. My mother reached for the oldest tool in the drawer. Families keep the peace, she said. You know how your tone? No, I said quietly. Families tell the truth. Here is mine. I will not be paying another invoice you create without my consent. I will not be your lender of last resort. I will not be erased so that you can pretend this house, this wedding, this narrative are spotless. My father tried a softer pitch. We had our reasons, he said. Then you can explain them to my attorney, I said. Starting tomorrow, all communication about the cottage and any money you expect from me goes through counsel. The room held 3 versions of power. My mother's rehearsed grace, my father's dignified retreat, my brother's practiced indifference. They had kept me in orbit for years with those looks. I stepped out of it. I picked up the folder. Do not enter the cottage, I added, still calm. Do not send anyone there. It is not a backdrop. It is a home. My home. I left before they could reach for a new script. In the driveway, I let air fill my lungs all the way to the bottom. I texted Aunt Maxine, thank you for telling the truth when it is inconvenient. Then I tapped a number I had saved for 5 years. Jenna Morales, she answered, crisp and steady, the way courts like their arguments. It is time, I said. I need a harassment prevention order under Chapter 2, 158E, if they show up again, and I want to prepare a summary process. Eviction action if anyone attempts to occupy the cottage. I have audio screenshots, invoices, and a deed recorded in April of 2022. Her voice warmed by a degree. Bring everything. Tomorrow morning at 10. I hung up and called Thomas Bedford. Numbers and consequences are his language. We are disentangling, I said. I want to close every joint account, remove every authorized user lock, every payment app connection, and separate the portfolios. I also want to add a practical item. A vehicle associated with my company has been used as if it were a family toy. Title and lease, Thomas asked, under your Delaware company. Yes, I said, both. Authorization will be simple, he said. We'll arrange an owner-authorized pickup at the club, polite in daylight. Polite daylight, the opposite of a decoy. I drove home in silence and let the layers settle the bait-and-switch invitation, the unseen hands moving pieces, the 8-year pattern that wore my competence like a uniform. They didn't expect this. Consequences don't have to be loud. They can be notarized, time-stamped, and delivered with a smile. They can arrive as a calendar block Jenna, 10 Hosru a.m., and a checklist from Thomas that begins with closing accounts and ends with owner-authorized pickup scheduled. On my counter, I set a folder labeled Facts and opened another Next Steps. On a clean legal pad, I wrote 3 doorways in neat block letters. Facts, boundaries, action. What followed wasn't a scene. It was a sequence calm, documented, designed to work whether anyone approved or not. At 10, I sat across from attorney Jenna Morales. I laid out the decoy invite, Ring audio group chat vendor charges, $28,400, and the recorded deed my Delaware company as sole owner since April 2022. Jenna listened, only taking notes. We start simple, she said. Harassment prevention order. Summary process in case someone tries to occupy the cottage. Preserve everything. No adjectives, just facts. We'll also demand reversal of the improper charges. File a dispute. Your documentation is excellent. By noon, we'd filed sworn statements, attached exhibits labeled. Between now and the hearing, Jenna said no inflammatory comments. Let their behavior build your case. From there, I met my advisor, Thomas. His checklist was already printed. We disentangled closed joint accounts, removed users, replaced cards, locked payment apps, revoked view-only access, tightened alerts, froze credit, added fraud alerts. Next, he said, tapping the page, assets titled to your company. The vehicle. Title and lease are under your Delaware company. Then authorization is straightforward. Pickup at the country club, daylight professional driver. We won't escalate. We'll follow the club's rules while exercising your rights. Do it, I said, polite daylight. He made the call while I watched. At home, I built the thing that steadies me, an evidence vault cloud mirrored backed up deed and title invoices messages, audio-video court filings, financial actions. Date first, file names, neutral descriptions. Metadata exported, chain of custody notes written. I posted a short LinkedIn update. Jenna cleared no speculation, only the deed, and a line directing inquiries to counsel. The ripples were immediate. A donor copied my father and me asking about ownership. I didn't reply. Jenna sent the recorded deed and a single sentence. Soft door closed. Security called my brother in the lobby demanding a financial discussion. I asked them to follow protocol and document. 10 minutes later, a voicemail from Kendra. She'd seen the lobby scene and wanted to put the truth in writing. She did first a voice note, then an affidavit. That evening, Aunt Maxine arrived with a decade of receipts. We triaged at my kitchen table. Proof does what apology can't. By week's end, the machine was moving court filing, set pickup, scheduled incident log, dispute opened. In court, the judge granted a Chapter 258E order, no contact, stay away, a clear pattern of emotional and financial harassment. Served that afternoon. At 2 the next day, the tow rolled up to the club. Title matched. Insurance matched. Authorization signed. The driver spoke to the valet like they were trading dry cleaning. No scene. The Ferrari eased onto the flatbed and the illusion left with it. People think power is volume. Often it's paperwork. A calendar invite, a notarized signature, a dry incident report, a tow strap in daylight while everyone keeps their voices low. By month's end, donors were asking better questions. The club opened an ethics review, and the cottage access was secured. I didn't raise my voice. I raised my standards. The room adjusted. A year later, morning light poured across the floors of a new lake house titled to a trust with my name. I host a small circle for women who are done apologizing. We talk salaries, boundaries, and the sentence no as a complete answer. Before bed, I glance at the evidence vault still there, then open a folder I like more: future. Travel plans, big projects. A talk titled in large letters, "You are not a bank." If this sounds like your life, the extra charger, the fixer, the walking safety net, try a different measure. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're instructions for how to love you and let you stay, and when necessary, deliver them in polite daylight.